sir. Me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook. Regular crowd in the house. Lots of topics as we discuss them just before Election Day, which is Tuesday. Hope everyone votes. First, let's meet the panelists, starting with Wendy Wiese from KTRS, Bill McClellan from STLtoday.com and your St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartmann from rawstory.com, the Riverfront Times, and KTRS, and from the St. Louis American, where he edits the news and also writes that sports column, Alvin Reid. Before we begin with the topics, we do want to acknowledge that there are colleagues who are winning big awards on this very day. It's the St. Louis Press Club Media Person of the Year Awards, and we want to congratulate Kay Quinn of 5 on Your Side, Debbie Monterey of KMOX, Elliot Davis from Fox 2, Joe Howman from the Post-Dispatch. A lot of these people have been Donnybrook participants.
There's a theme. There's a theme.
Yes, good things happen to people
right.
on this panel. Wiley Price from the St. Louis American.
Here, here.
And maybe most importantly, the folks behind Living St. Louis here at 9PBS. Congratulations to Kara Vanninger, Jim Kircher, Brooke Butler, Ruth Ezel, and our very own director, Anne Marie Berger. Congratulations on that. And I don't know how you're going to split that $5 million prize, but
I don't either.
Just in the interest of more camera time, I think you really shouldn't have left Anne Marie to the end. But yeah, if you're going to do that,
I think he was
I guess
building
you know-
in dramatic intensity. That's what it was.
Not that that
Alvin
was
Reid, Emerson Electric, in St. Louis since 1890, a Fortune 500 company, sold Climate Technologies for $14 billion. That was one of its divisions. And in so doing, also sold its Executive Retreat Center in Lincoln County and has announced that it's looking for a new headquarters, which may or may not be in St. Louis. What's your analysis of this one?
I don't think they are going to leave. Now, you know, we have the other big company that I think is going to leave in Centene, but I don't think they're going to leave. I think that they're ratcheting down like many major corporations are, but I've always kind of felt like Emerson was really a part of St. Louis and wants to remain a part of St. Louis. Whether it's a signal that the whole thing is falling apart, I don't think so either. Maybe I'm being a little Pollyannish, but I think they stay, and I don't think this one can be lopped into the St. Louis's dying case.
Okay, I disagree completely. I think Emerson will leave and Centene will stay. I think Centene's already, they've spent their money on their buildings and they don't want to spend any more. But I think Emerson is going to pick up and take off to greener climes.
When I was reading the article, Polly, I was reminded of I was sort of reminded of the Stan Kroenke era and the fact that, yeah, we've had a good run, but it's time for me to look to greener pastures. There was that sort of our history is here, our future is somewhere else. That was the undertone in the article. They even were talking about how they're looking for greater visibility, greater profitability in large markets, and I don't know that we're seen as large a market as we once were. I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
Who spent the $14 billion? The $14 billion.
Emerson?
Yes.
Well, their last
They
quarter,
sold Climate Technologies.
Right.
and their last quarter, they were up $1 billion just in the quarterly earnings.
When you're talking about these companies and these mergers or acquisitions and stuff, the last thing that's a priority for them anymore is where the headquarters is. I mean, and even the last thing beyond that is some sentiment about where their headquarters are. They're going to do, and in Centene's case, they have made it very clear. They are not emotional about this stuff. They're going to do what the bottom line says or what is in the interest of the activist investors. That's what runs these things. They do not do this on sentiment.
I will say this, that all I said was I think that they're going to stay and I think they're going to leave. And I'm not like saying that I'm not in the shareholders meeting.
Right.
I'm just saying this is what I think is going to happen.
I think they're
hope
going to
you're
go.
right.
If the Post-Dispatch, to its credit, put a list of all the companies that have left or were merged since 2010, and it's like 38, and they're big companies. And this is the trend. And I think one of the problems for Emerson, like many companies, is attracting the very top talent to St. Louis. The kid who goes to Harvard or Yale or University of Michigan, for whatever reason, he doesn't know about the free zoo, he doesn't want to move to St. Louis, and corporations are facing that. St. Louis kind of reminds me of the Bronx. My daughter goes there. It's a beautiful campus at Fordham, so it's very nice. And they've got a great Italian restaurant section and Yankee Stadium and maybe the world's best botanical garden, except ours, the New York Botanical Garden. A lot of nice amenities. But overall, no one wants to move to the Bronx. It's just got a bad reputation.
It's not Manhattan.
And St. Louis is like that right now. It's got a lot of...
in the airport, I mean, that's a big handicap to the city that you can't fly direct flights to places.
That's true.
I think the bigger
hurts it.
issue is that we've gone, as Mr. McClellan has eloquently put it, from a headquarters town to a branch office town.
Yep.
And we need, as a community, to reorganize the way. There was a time, back when we argued about civic progress here, that it was okay, I guess, to assume that the corporate leadership, the big corporations, were going to kind of take care of things. We've got to have a different paradigm, as they say, and have a different way of doing,
that is over.
doing
I think
decisions
that's
as a
over.
community. But that's all I'm saying.
Okay, Ray, let me ask you then about the future of the community and who's going to be the county executive. The first, and I think only debate between incumbent Sam Page and Mark Mantovani was Tuesday night. You watched it. What's your take? What happened?
You always have that, what do you call bias that going in,
That you don't like Sam Page?
no, well, there's that, but there's, I forget the word for it, where you have your bias going in will always affect, in any debate, how you perceive who won. Having said that, I thought Mark Mantovani just crushed him as in the debate. I have no idea whether that's how that translates into votes. I thought Mantovani, you know, as I've said before, and I think he really made it clear, this is a nonpartisan job, and I thought Mantovani was solid on pretty much every answer. I thought his closing about how he was from St. Louis was in his blood, and it was more important to him than partisan stuff, was really a great statement. And conversely, Sam Page's closing statement said it all, which is he said, his closing statements is, I'm a lifelong Democrat, and I've been a Democrat, and I don't think that has anything, I think that's great. I mean, if I really
Well,
thought...
he knows who's voting, huh?
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't think it,
He's
no, I get
got to
that.
get
I
Democrats
that.
out to
No,
vote.
but I'm saying that he did not have a case to be made about the job he did as county executive. So he just said, hey, I'm a Democrat, and I don't think this, if I thought this was about that, I'd be for it, but it isn't.
I think Mantovani's going to win. I mean, I just think that there's a sense in St. Louis County that good things have not been happening under Sam Page, and why not try something new?
When the Post-Dispatch, both police unions, when there's this much agreement on a Republican, then that tells you something about the current state of the county. And I thought that I agree with Ray, and obviously, yes, I have been tough on Sam Page. I do like Mark Mantovani, but we have to have bold leadership at this moment in time. And Sam Page is at least on camera, he comes across as very thoughtful. He's somewhat soft-spoken. I know I'm not the only one who feels that way, and that's a lovely way to be. But I just think right now the energy that Mark Mantovani displayed the other night is more in line with what we need.
First and foremost, Mark Mantovani is not a Republican, so all this, like, we're breaking our necks to endorse him because he's a Republican.
Neither was Donald Trump, really.
He's not a Republican.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, two, Mark Mantovani didn't say anything in the debate that he didn't say when we interviewed him right here at this table. So it was the same message, and it's fine. I will say this. I didn't think he had any chance. The day after he announced he was going to run as a Republican, I didn't think he had any chance whatsoever. I think now he has a chance. I do think Sam Page will prevail. But I don't know who's going to show up to vote. I honestly don't.
We know that you're right, because we know that the county is blue, increasingly blue all the time, as we know that the state is red. But unlike Trudy Bush Valentine, I do think that Mark Mantovani could turn this on its ear.
By the way, I was trying to think of my aging brain. It was confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias.
Right.
Okay, and I don't have an earphone. It just kind of came to me. It's a little slower these days. Confirmation
That little
bias.
voice,
The
it just takes
words don't
longer.
come quite as quick.
Wendy Wiese, Greater St. Louis Inc., which is a broad organization representing a lot of businesses and maybe some governments too, has come out with what's called a white paper, taking a look at what might be done with the $512 million. Actually, with interest, it should be quite north of $512 million right now, that the Regional Stadium Authority and the city and the county got after a legal settlement with Stan Kroenke. So the question is, what are you going to do with a $500 million? In a nutshell, the white paper says there's 3 options, and one of them is to have an endowment and live off the interest. And at 5% interest, that could be $25, $30 million a year. What do you think?
I needed a thesaurus to read Mr. Hall's proposal, correct? It was Jason Hall's proposal. And when he uses words like corpus, catalytic, and I thought, we've all been screaming about the sense of urgency that there should be, and the sense of transparency. That this has to be basic Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head language, that we are going to spend it on this, here are our needs, and this is what we're going to do. I thought that it looked like a prospectus for Washington University's endowment fund, instead of something, a wish list for a city that is in trouble and needs immediate help.
It's time to move our corpus.
We need to move our corpus.
Well, and I will say, the problem of catalytic converters being stolen is a problem.
I know.
Right.
There is a problem with that.
Yeah.
I
You
mean,
know, endowment's not a bad idea. I mean, it's an option.
But this money is supposed to be spent.
Right.
And that
Yeah,
money,
it is.
I think, no, wait a minute. Now, you're kind of like messing with the general idea of we got this money, let's spend this money, let's spend it wisely. But put it in the bank, to me, is not really an option.
Right.
I'll show my age here, too. Remember
Christmas clubs.
Remember when Mad Magazine used to do white papers and like in Mad books, and they would just lampoon something, and I think they called it gray papers. But when I was reading that, I said, like, this was a whole, like, what? Me worry? Because it was like this whole thing. I just kept reading and reading. I said, like, this didn't say anything.
No. Well,
it really just never got to the.
It came across as kind
It
of
goes to
convoluted.
the phrase you used, Wendy, which is that we need bold leadership, and this was kind of not that.
Not bold.
From the business community, bless their hearts. But the fact is, at least they finally spoke up. But I think Alvin's right that we need tangible things. The idea, for example, of mental health clinics, the idea of something you wouldn't do with the existing governments that's tangible, that you can fund, and I kid it, but I actually brought that up because I think it's an example, certainly not the
fund the
but
clinics through the
something.
endowment.
Well, no, but you got to because you got to establish them, and my point is the clinics was only meant as a little part of the thing. It wasn't like the ultimate thing, but the idea is come up
That's
with
your
something.
confirmation bias.
It is.
Talking once
No,
again.
it's fine, but the idea is do things that
aren't
wouldn't
the
be
lines
done.
between nonprofit and for-profit a little blurred with Greater St. Louis?
Well,
I think
of course,
that's another reason.
Oh, that's another
I
rabbit hole raised
I
in
also
the
don't.
road.
No, but I
I
think
also don't
he's
think that.
right, and I
you
don't-
said the business community. This is a statement. I got this feeling that the greater business community had not read that thing. Because,
Of course they have.
Okay.
Okay,
Because I think
but
they would have
here's the
pointed out,
question.
like, hey, we need to be a little bit more concise with what we're saying.
But you know, Sam Page did address this in the debate, and he said when he was criticized for not investing the $500 million in a high-interest-bearing account, he goes, "Oh, that's just political rhetoric." I don't think that is. I think that's a financial error made by the county executive. But he didn't specifically say where that money is going to go. Do you think he knows where it's going to go, but doesn't want to tell people until after the election?
Mark Mantovani criticized him in that debate for a lack of transparency.
When he came in saying
when
he was going to be
and on
transparent.
this point, he had brought in the mayor and stuff, but Mark Mantovani's point about it wasn't just that you're messing up with the interest, which was part of it, but he made the point, which I think was irrefutable, that it wasn't
money
transparent.
coming from the federal government. This is money that we're getting from a guy.
But it's
that's
still
just
gotta be
giving us money.
transparent.
Well, Ray's
You
right on
spend
that.
this money.
That's
Now,
No,
that
you're
money,
right. I agree.
that money from the
exactly
government,
right.
then yeah, you can invest
Okay.
it, you can do whatever.
Yeah, I
but
agree.
this is a
This is
prize.
found money. I agree.
Spending. Bill McClellan The county prosecutor, Wesley Bell, has spent, and this is just weeks after he went hat in hand to the county council looking for more money. He said he needed money, $700,000 to hire more prosecutors. Well, it turns out he took some money out of a prosecutor payroll fund to buy 2 automobiles, total value $130,000. So one was $69,000, the other was $60,000 and change. One was decked out with leather seats. Do you think that in these difficult times, maybe the car should be a little more austere or Spartan?
Well, I don't think that any official should have any car, frankly. I mean, I just don't think it's part of your job. I mean, you make enough money. I'm not upset that Wesley Bell is getting himself a good car. I mean, Bob McCullough had a similar car. I just don't think that any of these people making a big salary need a publicly purchased car on top of it.
I just think there's some hating on Wesley Bell kind of action here. I don't think that's an exorbitant amount of money to pay for those 2 cars. You know, if you one of our cars is not $69,000, but to tell the truth, we have a Ford Explorer, and it ain't the cheapest thing in the world. I just think this is just looking for scandal that is not there.
And see, I'm just thinking of my first reaction was that it was from a fund that was designated to find potential employees and prosecutors for his office. And that was because we need as many prosecutors as we can have at the county and the city. And I don't want him to be driving around in a Yugo.
Hyundai.
For those people who remember what a Yugo is, I just think $70,000 for one car.
It probably has bulletproof glass and things like that. Let's be honest
Don't forget,
here.
the county's running a deficit. Charlie Brennan is driving a 2014 Monte Carlo. As a provocateur, they did give me a free pass to the Loop Trolley here at Channel 9. But you know what? I don't think most people are driving $69,000 cars.
These stories are just.
Why?
I'm sorry. I think there's there's double standard with Wesley Bell, and I don't think.
No, it's not.
I do.
Remember,
I
we
do.
went
But
after
I will
Jack
say this.
Fiechner for spending. We went
I
after
know.
Miss Carpenter,
I know,
the
but
clerk,
Wesley
for
Bell.
spending,
I mean,
right?
Yeah.
I will say this.
It's not
It's
going
one
after
of these.
him.
The Post has been doing this for a long time. Where you focus on some, and not just the Post, but you focus on some little symbolic thing like this.
Like government spending?
No, this is not. And then say, well, maybe they could hire a new prosecutor. It's like, it's just not rational. I'm sorry, it's just not a rational comparison.
I agree.
Well, when they come around asking for a tax increase,
Oh my God.
I'm going to say, why don't you trade in your car and ride Metro?
Oh yeah, that's a great.
Why
idea.
not? If Metro is so important, why don't public officials ride it?
Charlie, and once again, I'm going to say this, that there's a lot more to these vehicles if you're a prosecutor than just your average everyday vehicle. I'm sure it's got, if he had to be found or something like that, I think it's got every tracer, it's got bulletproof glass, it's probably got,
is this Bogota, Colombia? Have we?
Yes.
I mean, no. I understand,
Wendy,
but have there
Wendy,
been
people,
attempts on their lives
Wendy,
that
people
we
walk
don't know
up in
about?
schools with AK-47.
I understand that, but I just
Let me tell you
find
something.
not-
Prosecute.
No, you're
When I lived in
absolutely right.
Massachusetts, Barney Frank was a member of the House of Reps, and he took the trolley to work, and so did the governor, Michael Dukakis.
Look
What
at
year
Nancy
was-
Pelosi's husband. I
Yeah.
understand the need for
Yeah.
security. I just didn't realize. I had
man.
He's
not
a
read.
prosecutor
I get
in
that.
the United States of
just-
America.
Come
Come
I
on,
get
Hey,
give me
that.
a
Ray,
break.
let me ask you about the Board of Aldermen president race, the first of many, apparently.
Right.
It's the second one between Jack Kotar and Megan Green. Who do you think would be the better president of the Board of Aldermen? Don't forget, the Board of Aldermen president is a member of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, the three-person troika that oversees de facto the budget in the city of St. Louis.
Right.
So it's a pretty important job.
Well, and even though we're sitting in the city of St. Louis, I'm sure we'll hear, you don't live in the city. I live, a mile from the city. But my own view would be Megan Green, because I think she will do a better job seeing the whole field. I think Jack Coder's a really nice guy, but I think this is a really good substantive choice for the voters in the city. Jack Coder is much more pro-development and much, if that's what you think.
And that's a bad thing.
I didn't say that. No, I'm just saying I think
No
it's
wonder
a
Emerson's
balance.
leaving.
It's a balancing act. I think that Megan Green is not. I don't think she's anti-development, but she has a perspective that I think would be better served. But again, it's really, I think it's a good choice. I think they're both decent candidates, and I think it's good choice depending on kind of what your confirmation bias is.
I have a feeling that the citizens are going to go for Jack Kodar, who talks about potholes, cops, and picking up the garbage. And I think that really is what the city needs right now. So he'd be if I lived half a block to the east inside the city limits, I'd be voting.
But you don't.
But I don't.
Just remember, you
and
don't.
I don't either. And I think, like I said, the city needs those things, and they need them badly. But what the city doesn't need is just more turmoil. And I think he's running based on, I'm the anti-Tashara Jones. And right now, the city doesn't need that. You're going to have a board of aldermen that's reduced down to 14 here pretty soon. I think it'll be a workable number. The board of aldermen can keep crazy stuff from happening, if you want to say that. And so I just don't think, elect somebody, and what I'm here to do is to just mess up the flow. Now, I'm not saying that that's his be-all and end-all, but it will just create an antagonism that the city just doesn't need right now.
You know the funny thing about this race? They're going to do it again in March.
Yeah,
because this fills
that's the primary.
This
yeah.
fills the unexpired term of Lewis Reid, who's going to be spending his days at the Gray Bar Motel. And so as a result, they're going to have another primary in March. These two could face off again in March, and then if they finish 1-2, they'll see each other again in April.
Well,
And I'd like to respond to what you said, though, Alvin, that the city doesn't need that turmoil. It needs to work together. I would agree with you if the city was headed in the right direction and things were going well. But right now, things aren't going well. And I don't blame the mayor.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Yeah.
I don't. I mean, things haven't been going well for a long time. And Mayor Jones inherited most of the problems. But I think the city is sliding down. And so I think that maybe shaking things up wouldn't be so bad.
Okay, one more topic, because we have a historic ballot constitutional amendment in front of voters Tuesday in the state of Missouri. Alvin Reid, of course, it would legalize marijuana so that people could enjoy it recreationally. I am just floored by the opposition. Never before has politics brought together such strange bedfellows.
Yeah.
You got the governor, the NAACP, the mayor, the sheriffs, the bishops. You have the prosecutors, all against it. And the only people I know who are for it are the 4 panelists who are around this table, not me.
All right. But see, you left out. You said all those groups and organizations that are against it, the people are for it. And some of these groups and organizations know that the people are going to go out there and say, like, legalize marijuana? Big yes, okay? I think, and the mayor included, like say, like, you know what, this is going to pass, so I may as well just say, I'm not down with it.
Yeah.
And what that argument about what happens to incarcerated people, or they just go let them go, or it doesn't point out exactly this is going to be handled. So, like, we're not going to legalize marijuana because we don't know what's going to happen to people that are already in prison. That doesn't make any sense to me.
And I think it's important to understand. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think it's really important to understand. There's people have their, preconceived ideas about pot.
Confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias. Exactly. That's a great theme.
That ought to be on our next coffee cup.
But let's be clear. There are a couple of just ginormous reasons to be for this. One is it will generate a tremendous amount of taxable revenue that is being spent now for pot, but is not being collected and taxed and legally. And it will be a boon to the criminal justice system to free up resources to focus on violent criminals rather than pot cases. Those two are huge. And the third point I'd like to make is all the people that say this isn't the right way to do this. What makes you think that 2 years from now we're going to have this miracle referendum that everybody's going to come together?
What about
Your first point is right. A lot of money coming in. But the second point, I don't think the criminal justice system is spending a lot of time on pot right now.
I don't think it is either. In fact, the prosecutors in the city and the county do not prosecute pot.
We're not talking city and county.
We're not
just talking city and county.
When you put this into a constitutional amendment, and it's 39 pages, and the people, they haven't read it, there are going to be problems in that that'll need fixing, and it'll be impossible to fix because
you do another constitutional amendment.
You'll have to get a statewide vote. But the only people who would spend money on that would be the people who would get financial benefits from it like they're doing it with this one. So
This
it'll
wouldn't
never
have
be
any,
changed.
this opposition wouldn't have anything to do with the alcohol industry, would it?
And the
I mean,
tobacco
no.
industry.
And the tobacco industry, because the Missouri Hospital Association was going down the laundry list of all of the dangers. Not once they were talking about young people who, by the way, are using pot less and less since it was legalized in places like Colorado. But they didn't say a thing about alcohol. They didn't say a thing about underage drinking. That, to me, speaks volumes.
Well, maybe
about
so,
who
but
might be
I thought
behind-
Michelle Munns of the Post-Dispatch, our friend, did a great job when she interviewed doctors and others who had great skepticism about the passage of a bill or an amendment that would legalize marijuana.
Well, it's time they just get their corpuses out of
That
the
they
way.
have to move their
Okay,
corpuses.
congratulations once again to Anne-Marie Berger and everyone else at Living St. Louis for the big Media Person of the Year award. Let's tell folks how they can contact us if they'd like to complain about this program, as you often do. Send those letters to 9PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. We love those emails, Donnybrook at 9pbs.org, and those tweets, hashtag DonnybrookSTL. You can also call the 9 line at 314-512-9094. You can follow us on your favorite podcast like I did these past 2 weeks, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn.
That sounded like he's going to give us
Thanks so
his
much.
notes.
Congratulations to everybody. We sure appreciate it. We'll see you next week at this time. Stay tuned. Rabbi Susan Talvey joins Bill and me on Next Up. We'll talk about anti-Semitism in the United States and beyond.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.